Well, good evening, everyone. Let's say this feels like a family reunion. We're all together. This is terrific. I'm Ginny Mackin, and I sit proudly on the board. Thank you so much. I'm a very proud member of the board for the Martin ALS Foundation, and I do really feel like we are family. Let me tell you why. Everyone here has a connection, either to ALS, louder? Thank you, Neil. Either to ALS and therefore to Joe, but you may have worked with Joe. You may have been a recipient of services of the foundation. You may be a heartfelt supporter. You may actually be a caregiver, or if you're really blessed, you have a blood or name relationship to Mr. Joe Norman. And those are the luckiest, I think, of all. So I think of us as one big family because we all have an important connection. So here's how I joined the family. I was a member of Joe Martin's team, along with so many of my good friends here tonight. We either worked for, with, I think even Hugh McCall would say he probably worked for Joe. We all worked for Joe. And at that mighty, mighty bank and its predecessor banks, it was an honor to be there. And during those times, those Camelot years, as we call them, we often felt like we were kneeling at the shrine of a man who was teaching us some incredibly important life lessons. They were lessons of care, integrity, giving back, certainly grace, and always teaching us, no matter who you were, no matter what your level, you were a leader. And so we believed in ourselves. I think what Joe did for me and for so many is he helped us love ourselves more, which is what great leaders do. You find in yourself those skills and gifts that you then share on behalf of an organization and a team. That's the lesson that Joe taught me in terms of leadership. He also had there was a steep price, but it became very, very easy. He expected us to give back, and he expected us to pay it forward. I think that's another thread through Joe's life and his leadership that's touched so many of us. So what I often found was he believed in me and in others more than we believed in ourselves, which was very powerful. I found that when I screwed up, boy, I wish Chuck Cooley was here tonight. So maybe someone will tell him this story. I made a big mistake. I managed media relations for that nice Hugh McCall over there, and I made a big mistake. He ended up on the cover of Fortune magazine as one of the toughest bosses. You know, and we tried to spin it as tough is great, tough is good, yeah, but that grenade just wouldn't go away. So they fell into the cliche of Hugh McCall, and all of us knew there was so much more. When the magazine hit, I took it to Chuck, who did not want us to do it, and I showed it to him, and he threw it across the room. And I said, okay, Chuck, I'm really sorry about this, and Joe walked in. And Joe said, I have an assignment for you, Ginny Mackin, and he put me on a merger, and off I went to do something even bigger, because he knew, and he believed in me, that I might have made a mistake, but the grace in that was he could then trust me to do something even bigger. And that was Joe, right? He always believed in you more than you believed in yourself. That, I think, for so many of us, has helped us be better people and better leaders, because he assumed goodness in us, we then assume the best in others. And by doing that, we offer grace. We have trust in people, we have faith in people, and that makes it a whole lot better. So Joe has formed an awful lot for me. His legacy lives on in every person in this room because you're somehow touched and you're part of this powerful family. I want to just say that this is a special evening where we're going to be talking about a lot of the wonderful things that Joe did, but let's remember why we're here. Joe made a sacrifice, and he always thought about how he would take a situation and pay it forward. And that's what he's doing today. And you're all a huge part of that. So welcome to the family. Thank you for being here. And I would now like to bring up an actual blood member of the family, Joe B. Martin. Coming up, Joe B. is the Reverend Joe B. Martin. He is the pastor of Sardis Presbyterian Church here in Charlotte. And we know that Joe is proud of that too. He'll offer our prayer tonight. Thank you.
Yep, we all worked for Joe Martin. And Joan. Obviously, my father's name will be featured prominently tonight, but you might be here because of someone else. I wish that I knew all of those names so I could pray for each one of those people specifically, but I don't know them, so I need your help. During the prayer, there's going to be a time in which you can call out the name of someone that you have loved and lost, someone who struggles now, or someone who has been a blessing to you during times of struggle. Someone who has been a part of the together that makes us stronger, whether or not that had to do with ALS. You're going to have 10 seconds during the prayer to call out that name, which means we will all be speaking together at the same time. That's okay. God can hear more prayers than one at once, which is also very helpful. So to prepare for that, before I begin the prayer, we're going to have just a moment of silence so you can think about the names that you might call out during that time. So let us pray.
Rob Pugh.
Almighty and merciful God, full of power and empowerment, passion and compassion, we thank you for your gift to us of this day, maybe for the work that we got done in it, or the work that we witnessed you doing in it, maybe for the exciting moments that brought us energy, or peaceful moments that gave us a little rest. Maybe for the things that we learned, the new experiences we had, or old friends with whom we've been able to reconnect tonight. Or maybe for the courage that comes from this day's challenges faced, and the endurance that comes from continuing every day's race. We thank you for the Joe Martin ALS Foundation staff, board, volunteers, and donors who work and give to make life's work easier for others. We thank you for everyone who is a part of our together, those who step into our lives to help, and those who invite us into their lives to include us in their together. We thank you for the opportunity today to hear Hugh McCall speak, and I thank you for how his togetherness with my family made Joe Martin stronger. We also lift up these names to you of people who are on our hearts.
Rob Pugh. Janice Bratt.
Jamie Pitt.
Mighty God, we ask that you bless this food to strengthen each of us for the days ahead and the challenges those days may bring to us or to someone else we might be in a position to help. Eternal God, we ask that you bless this time we have together around these tables to build up a community that cares about each member of it. Living God, we ask that you bless the stories we hear and share to inspire all of us together while we remember those we miss and pray for those for whom ALS has added to the struggle of life. To work for a future where everyone can live every day with a hope born out of knowledge that they are loved and not alone. Amen.
My name is David Martin. I am Joe B's little brother. I am Joe and Joan. And I hope you all have a good night. Thank you very much. I was 19 years old and starting my freshman year of college when my dad was diagnosed with ALS. My brother was in seminary school in Richmond, Virginia, and my sister was living in Bellingham, Washington. So my mom assumed the role as his primary caregiver, only receiving help when one of us happened to be home. She had no training for this job, and she could not have understood just how difficult it would be. ALS strikes fast, and the life of a caregiver is constant care, physically and mentally demanding. So after a while, she and my dad decided they needed help. We were fortunate enough to find professional care when we met Neil Cottrell. And Neil decided that the family, yeah, go ahead, Neil. And Neil decided that the family members should also be trained because you never knew when or how Dad would need help. I can remember being in charge for the first time and lifting my dad from his chair to the bed. It's a strenuous process of getting under his shoulders and lifting up while turning his back to the bed, making sure his feet don't tangle. And then slowly sitting him down on the side of the bed, deep enough to where he won't slide off. Then you brace his body and lift up his forehead so you can make eye contact and make sure he was okay. When he signaled all was well, you pivot him again and roll him onto his side. What I think about most about that night was not the struggle to get him into a comfortable position. It's what he told me next. He raised his eyebrows up and down, signaling that he wanted the letterboard. The letterboard is a big, transparent plastic sheet with the alphabet on it. He would look at the letters, and we would read his eyes from the opposite side, repeating each letter aloud. It is not easy, and it was especially difficult while we were both on our sides. But something was bothering him, and I was worried that I had done something wrong. But all he wanted was for me to smooth out his fingers that were curled up under the pillow so he wouldn't lose circulation during the night. I often imagine how challenging it must have been for my dad to request so many simple tasks every day, balanced against the fact of how difficult it was to even communicate in the first place. It was difficult to track his eyes, and if there were too many sentences in a row, you might forget the early sentences and then lose track of the story, and he'd have to start over or even decide to just end the conversation if it was proving frustrating enough. So he had to truncate his words and sentences, waiting for you to repeat each letter and spell each word. What I hate admitting was the worst part for me was how much my back would hurt sitting on a stool hunched over reading his eyes for long periods of time. I had to stop in the middle of conversations and stretch or even take a knee and hold the letterboard up high. What I wanted most was just one conversation with him. What I wanted most was just one conversation with him like we had when I was growing up, where we could interrupt each other and make fun of each other and just banter like we did at the dinner table in the days before the diagnosis. After a while, he got an eye-gaze computer. The computer screen had a keyboard on it and a camera that was able to read his eyes and tell what letter he was looking at. He wrote books, poems, and speeches using that computer. It allowed him to surf the internet, play games, research projects, and plan trips. The computer speaker could even repeat out loud what my dad wrote, so there was no need for the difficult translation process when he was in front of the eye gaze. This was a monumental addition to the family, even though it could be difficult to understand at times. It sounded just like that robotic voice that Stephen Hawking made famous. And sometimes he had to repeat himself, but hearing his words rather than translating his words was a major relief. It saved time and my back. I remember when we were first getting used to Dad's new voice on a family vacation. By this time, Neil was pretty much family and went on our family trips. It was an island vacation, and the house was one of those houses, where an entire wall is missing, and so it just opened up into the daylight. And Dad wanted to get on his eye gaze to get online to research whatever he was working on at the time. But something was wrong with the setup, and Dad typed into the computer, and the computer read back, "More again." That's my best Stephen Hawking impression I got. Which makes sense because the house was bright and the eye gaze camera was sensitive. So Neil went and found some string and stretched it from wall to wall and hung some blankets over it. More damn. I should have brought an actual computer for that part. It sounded like a raven. But the computer voice, more damn, the computer voice insisted, with my dad laughing this time. So he added another string of blankets at a different angle. More damn. It said again. And my dad was laughing even harder. It got to the point where we basically draped a blanket over his head and then propped a mattress up against his chair like a wall to keep out as much daylight as possible. More damn. Again. Finally, Neil stepped under the blanket and looked at the computer screen and figured out the problem. There he saw the word my dad had been typing. It was not more dim, it was modem. All we had to do was turn on the modem. It was so ridiculous that my mom even took a picture. Neil, you have the picture? There it is. How something so simple can be so difficult. There are so many families who live with ALS who do not have the means to provide professional care and are unable to take advantage of the technological advancements such as the eye gaze computer. Husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, and even children become primary caregivers, dedicating their lives to this new role. And most of these caregivers have zero experience providing the level of care necessary. They assume this role 100% out of love. I witnessed this love, loyalty, and sacrifice with my mother back in 1998, and there are countless of others stepping into the same role every day. To me, a big part of tonight is to let these caregivers know that we appreciate them and support them. So if you are a caregiver, or have ever been a caregiver, or currently a caregiver, could you please stand if you're able so we can all just say thank you? This foundation began with an idea from my dad. It was brought to fruition by Neil. And it exists because of all of you who support the Joe Martin ALS Foundation and help empower families as they face the challenge of living actively with ALS. Because of you, so many ALS patients are able to receive expert care and services. Inexperienced caregivers are being trained. Children are going to camp, and all at no cost to these families. We're about to see a video of one of these families. So tonight, when you get into bed, take a second to smooth out your fingers and think about all you have done to help this family. And think about how many more still need your help. We are stronger together. My dad wrote a book about his life with ALS. Toward the end, he wrote, "Many of the things essential for recovery or for living are incredibly expensive. But those things that are beyond the reach of individuals are easily within the grasp of a caring community." He said, on any given day, any given person can do something toward creating a healing environment. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your support. It means the world to so many people. Thank you.